related to several questions or comments earlier, mainly having to do with the direness of the situation, page 10 being the most dramatic, the 66 billion, probably higher. What is your gentleman's view with respect to, first of all, anything going on in our beloved state with respect to right to work? Or what is your view about a campaign for right to work? Because you cannot attack the problem on page 10 if you don't get right at the situation where the unions negotiate privately with the governor, someone they elected. Please address my questions.
Yeah, thank you for being here. The question's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, I sit on as the ranking member of the Labor Committee. The Labor Committee is composed of.
Share what right to work is, because I know many people don't know what that is.
Well,
Sorry, Kurt. Sorry, I can't hear you.
in terms of the right to work, some people, is anybody familiar with the right to work, or anybody need an explanation of that? What it is, basically right now, as you may have, well, there's been some problems out in Illinois and in other parts of the country where they've actually demanded the right to go to work without having to become a member of a union. For instance, just right now, if you're a member of the union, you have to be a member of the union. There's no opting out. So there are issues. Let me just backtrack a little bit to start again. As part of the Labor Committee, we try to bring up the right that people can work freely without having to be part of a union and having to pay the union dues and the benefits and all those things that they are obligated to pay. Our committee is composed up of, I would say, about 16 members, 4 of which are Republicans, the balance are Democrats. I tried to raise the issue with the chairs of the committee just to get a public hearing on the right to work. But because we're so outnumbered on the committee, there's no discussion of it. It never can even reach the dialogue of having people come in to talk about what they want, how they'd like to handle it, how they'd like to see the state to address it, because it never even reaches the committee floor for a vote or a public hearing or a dialogue. We had a similar issue with prevailing wage. The towns and municipalities are paying much more in wages to workers because of the fact when you reach a certain threshold for projects, prevailing wage for whatever the union rate may be, the towns would have to pay. Now, if they put that out to a private project or a private company, it would cost the towns less. They're spending millions of dollars more just because of this type of thing. These are the type of issues that are holding Connecticut down in my mind. I'm just one person. But there is a problem just to even have that dialogue on a state level because, again, in my mind, the unions have had so much control over how we're operating our budget, what we're spending our money on, what we're going to do. We're going to have more bills coming up to the legislature this week and going to the end of session also really that will hurt the state of Connecticut in terms of jobs and businesses just because it's very pro-labor. Now, my father was a union guy. He was a union plumber. So I'm not up here to say that unions are bad. I grew up with a father who was a part of it. But I have seen what has happened over the years with the power that they have gained. And people in the past used to, they joined a union because there were certain protections that they needed, clearly. But what's happened now is, especially public unions, when you think about it, public unions, when we were growing up, they were desired because, why? Well, the pay wasn't that great. But you know what? They gave pretty decent benefits, and it was worth, it was 9 to 5, no weekends, good benefits, pay was average. People in the private sector, they wanted to work harder, whatever, make more money. It was, different hours, type of thing, but they took the chance. a little bit different. Now, what's happening is the private sector, the costs are low, the pay is low, the benefits are so expensive you cannot afford it. I have a private law firm in New Fairfield. The benefits that I had to pay, and I have a family of one wife, 2 children. It cost me like, no medical issues. Thank God I'm healthy. It was like $1,400, $1,500 a month. No problems at all with health-wise. And every 3 to 6 months, it went up. How do you afford that? And when you talk about the small businesses, that's what's happening. They're getting hammered every which way they can. So now they're paying more in benefits to the private sector. They're making less money, and the unions have really taken over this state. So the right to work is a big issue, just in terms of how we handle it, how we open the doors back to employers to come and actually work and make a living without the high cost of the fringe benefits. So I'll turn it over. I probably spoke a little bit too much about that.
He deserves combat pay for serving on the labor committee. But, you know, I went on television, did one of those Sunday morning talk shows, and was asked about it. I said I would love to have a debate about whether Connecticut should be a right to work state, because we need to inform and educate everybody about how much it costs to do business in the state of Connecticut. It's amazing when you get a company, I think it was Boeing, that wanted to move jobs and create a manufacturing plant in South Carolina, and the union said you can't go in there because South Carolina's a right to work state. I think if we looked at, and we haven't, we should, all the manufacturing jobs we've lost in the last 10 years, to see how many went to states like South Carolina because the cost of doing business was less expensive. That will help us make the argument about how we can keep and retain those small manufacturing companies are struggling even more than the big ones in the state of Connecticut. But it's difficult. I said on that show that they probably wouldn't even give us a hearing, on a public hearing on the bill, and sure enough, they wouldn't even give us a public hearing. They don't even want to have a public hearing to talk about whether it be the right thing.